Chapter 1. The Fundamental Misunderstanding. You are not the ego, you are awareness. Man is all imagination, and God is man and exists in us and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, that is, God himself. Neville Goddard, The Law and the Promise. The first realization that sets everything in motion. Waking up from the illusion. Let's begin with a simple piercing truth. You are not your thoughts. You are not your fears, your doubts, your impulsive reactions, your inner critic, your identity crisis, or even your goals and dreams. You are not the one saying, "I'll never figure this out," or "I should be farther along by now." You are the one hearing those thoughts. You are the awareness they arise in. That might sound poetic or philosophical, but it's not. It's reality. And it's the most important distinction you will ever make in your life. For most people, the journey of conscious manifestation begins in a state of quiet desperation. We discover teachings like Neville Goddard's Law of Assumption not because life is perfect, but because something isn't working. Something feels missing. We want love. We want peace. We want money. We want security. But more than anything, we want to feel different. To live from a center that isn't constantly hijacked by fear, lack, and confusion. And so we start imagining. We visualize our desires. We repeat affirmations. We assume the end. But deep down, many of us are doing all of this from the same identity that caused the suffering in the first place. The ego. That's why we often struggle to see change, or we sabotage progress, or we obsess over the 3D and ask, why isn't it working? Because we're still coming from the wrong self. Until we realize the difference between ego and awareness, we are trying to reprogram the dream while still asleep. What is the ego really? Let's be clear. When we use the word ego in this book, we're not talking about arrogance. We're talking about the false self, the 3D identity you are taught to believe you are. The ego is a mental program built over time from childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, trauma and attachment wounds, social labels, the voice of your caregivers, teachers, bullies, exes and influencers, and repetitive thought patterns, especially negative ones. It is not inherently evil. It is not your enemy. It's simply a survival mechanism, a voice that thinks its job is to protect you by controlling the narrative of your life. The ego lives by rules like, don't get your hopes up. If you expect too much, you'll be disappointed. People like you don't get that. You're running out of time. This isn't realistic. You're too much, not enough, unworthy. It speaks in shoulds, can'ts, what ifs, and but what about the 3D? It narrates your reality as if it's a closed loop, a prison of what's probable instead of what's possible. But here's the problem. You cannot create the life you want from the identity that believes it's not possible. That's why every technique you try will feel like a lie if the ego is the one using it. Manifestation only works when it flows from the truth of who you really are, not the wounded story you've been told. What is awareness? If ego is your false self, awareness is your true self. It is the quiet, spacious, ever-present consciousness that notices everything. Awareness is not a concept, it's your real identity. It has no age, no race, no gender, no name. It isn't limited to your body or brain. It's the part of you that was there before your personality was formed and will still be there when everything else fades. You've already experienced awareness, whether you realize it or not. Think of a moment when time stopped, when you were in awe of a sunset, when you felt deep love, when you were completely present. In those moments, the voice in your head was silent. You weren't thinking about what you looked like or what someone thought of you. You just were. That's awareness. It is not trying to get anywhere. It does not judge. It simply observes. It knows your desires are valid. It trusts in your power. It never panics. It is who you are when you remember you are not the character. You are the one watching the character. The misunderstanding that causes all suffering. Imagine you are watching a movie. On the screen is a character going through heartbreak, failure, joy, success, anxiety. You feel for them. You cry. You cheer. You get immersed. But you never forget. You're not in the movie. You're in the theatre. Suffering begins when you forget you're in the theatre and start thinking you're the character. That's what the ego does. It hypnotizes you into identifying with your thoughts, your past, your emotions, your current circumstances. But you are the screen, not the movie. You are the one who watches thoughts come and go. You are the one who can shift perspectives at will. You are the one who can assume a new end, a new identity, a new reality, simply by choosing to. And that choice doesn't happen at the level of ego. It happens when you wake up as awareness. Why you must begin with identity. So many people try to manifest a better life without ever changing who they think they are. They visualize love while still believing they are hard to love. They affirm wealth while identifying as someone who never has enough. They imagine success while still seeing themselves as an imposter. This is why results feel temporary or don't show up at all, because the external world can only reflect who you're being, not just what you're saying. Let's go deeper. The law of assumption doesn't just say, assume your desire is done. It says, assume the identity of the version of you for whom it's already done. The version of you who has what you want does not obsess over timing, proof, or control. They are relaxed, peaceful, free. They aren't operating from lack or urgency. They are simply being. That's what awareness feels like. You don't have to try to get there. You already are there, beneath the noise. So in this chapter, we begin the journey of peeling back the layers of false identity and reconnecting to your original nature. Not so you can manifest faster, but so you can live truer. From there, the manifestations come effortlessly, not because you forced them, but because you finally stopped resisting them. The ego's favorite weapon, the inner narrative. Once you begin to entertain the idea that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, and not even the you you've been narrating your entire life, the mind doesn't go down quietly. In fact, this is where the ego fights hardest. Why? Because its very survival depends upon your continued identification with the story it's telling. That story sounds something like this. I always sabotage things. I've never been the pretty one. I'm too old to change now. No one takes me seriously. I can't have what I want because of what I did. These are not just stray thoughts. They're neural pathways reinforced by repetition, emotion, and belief. Your nervous system doesn't know they're not true. It treats them as reality. Your brain looks for evidence to confirm them. And your ego? It gets stronger every time you believe one of these thoughts is you. But once you see clearly that these stories are being spoken to you, not from you, you reclaim a powerful truth. You are the observer, the one hearing the story, not the one stuck in it. Why the ego creates loops, and what they really protect. Your ego doesn't want you to suffer. Strangely enough, it wants to protect you. but its definition of safety is based on past experience, not present truth. It uses looping thoughts like, "He's probably going to leave me," or "This will never work out," because certainty, even negative certainty, feels safer than the unknown. These loops are trauma adaptations. Think of it like this. If you grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent, achievement was your only ticket to approval, or your emotions were shamed, then your mind adapted by creating rules that helped you survive. Don't get too excited, good things don't last. It's safer to assume they're lying. Only speak when you're certain it won't start a fight. These aren't personality quirks, they're nervous system programming, and they're based on the belief that the world is a dangerous place, and you are alone in it. Awareness, on the other hand, doesn't play by these rules. It doesn't loop. It doesn't catastrophize. It doesn't create a strategy. It simply is. And when you shift into it, even for a moment, you exit the matrix of defense mechanisms and enter the peace of presence. The illusion of control. Ego doesn't just want to protect you, it wants to control everything. Outcomes, people, the timing of your desires. If awareness is oceanic and open-handed, ego is clenched and gripping the wheel, white-knuckled, trying to micromanage the universe. This shows up in subtle and not-so-subtle ways. You visualize your significant person texting you, but only if it's today. You assume the end, but keep checking the 3D for signs every few hours. You affirm that you are abundant, but compulsively calculate if you have enough money for next month. You try to do techniques to get the thing, instead of being the version of you who already has it. The more attached ego is to a specific outcome or method, the less space awareness has to guide. Awareness allows, ego demands. One of the biggest lies of the ego is that control equals power. In truth, the need to control is a sign of fear. Real power is sourced from surrender, from trust, from alignment with the invisible. The deeper your embodiment of awareness becomes, the less you need to control, and paradoxically, the more naturally life flows in your favor. The emotional body. Ego's playground, awareness's portal. Let's talk about emotion. For many people on the spiritual or manifestation path, there's confusion around how to handle feelings. Some believe negative emotions are bad and must be avoided. Others believe in purging everything as it comes. But here's the awareness-based view. Emotions are neither bad nor wrong. They are simply sensations passing through the field of awareness. That's it. Ego uses emotions as evidence of danger. Anxiety? Something's wrong. Sadness? You're failing. Anger? You're not spiritual enough. Numbness? You're broken. But awareness allows all of it without flinching. The key shift is this. I am anxious becomes I am noticing anxiety in my awareness. I feel abandoned becomes there is a sensation of abandonment arising. I witness it with compassion. You become less fused with the feeling and more free to be with it. This is the foundation of emotional self-regulation through identity awareness. And here's the magic. The more safely you can hold your emotional experience without over-identifying with it, the less it controls your behavior, and the more quickly your external world shifts. This is not spiritual bypassing, this is embodied witnessing, and it's one of the most healing capacities you can develop on the path of becoming. Practice the ego-awareness dialogue. Let's make this practical. Try this exercise the next time you're triggered, spiraling, or caught in an inner narrative that feels overwhelming. Step 1. Identify the voice of ego. Ask yourself, what is the story I'm hearing right now? Write it down. Don't censor it. Example: he's never going to come back. I ruined everything. I should have kept my mouth shut. Step 2. Name the fear beneath the story. What is ego trying to protect you from? What's the deeper fear? Example: if I lose him, I'll be alone forever. I'll never be chosen again. Step 3. Invite awareness to speak. Now, close your eyes. Take a breath. Imagine awareness as a calm, loving presence that sees all of you. Ask, what is the truth beyond this fear? Example: you are never alone. You cannot lose what is truly yours. You are safe, even in this moment. Step 4. Sit in the space between thoughts. Allow the ego story and the awareness response to coexist in your field. Just notice. No need to choose, just observe. This creates space. Space for healing, space for clarity, space for you to respond, not from fear, but from who you really are. You are not the thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, or the circumstances you face. You are the one who observes it all. The ego's loops: fear, control, and the false sense of identity. If you've ever found yourself spiraling in fear, obsessing over someone's response, or endlessly checking for 3D validation, congratulations, you've met the ego. It isn't malicious, it's not out to sabotage your life. In fact, it believes it's protecting you. The problem is, the ego's way of protecting you is outdated, rooted in early survival patterns and reinforced by modern fear-based systems. The ego loops by nature. It thrives in the known. Whether it's joyless or chaotic doesn't matter, as long as it's familiar. That's why people stay in unfulfilling jobs or relationships. That's why manifesting a new reality feels impossible at times. Not because the new isn't available, but because the ego has anchored your identity to the old. Here's how the ego maintains these loops. 1. Fear of change. Anything unknown feels unsafe, even if it's desirable. 2. Control through logic. If the ego can figure it out, it feels in control, even if figuring it out never leads anywhere. 3. Identification with the past. Ego defines who you are based on what happened, not on who you're becoming. 4. Seeking external proof. The ego needs the 3D world to change first before it will feel safe changing within. Awareness, on the other hand, doesn't loop. It doesn't resist change or demand certainty. It's still. It's now. It's presence. It doesn't react. It observes. It doesn't grasp. It allows. And this distinction is the key to everything. Awareness is not a mindset, it's a position. Let's be clear. Awareness is not just a calm mood or a positive vibe. It's not just deep breathing or mindfulness, though those can help bring you to it. Awareness is a position you take within yourself, an internal seat from which you see everything without being swept away by any of it. When you observe your thoughts instead of becoming them, that's awareness. When you notice fear arising but don't follow its instructions, that's awareness. When you allow yourself to sit with a difficult feeling without rushing to fix it, numb it, or reframe it, that is the strength of awareness in action. And this position is not earned. It's not developed over years. It's not something only the spiritually elite have access to. You are already awareness. The only thing that changes is your identification. The eye that sees it all. One of the simplest ways to return to awareness is to ask yourself, who is noticing this? When you're lost in a story, he didn't text me back, that means I'm not chosen, I'm not wanted. Pause. Gently ask, who is aware that I'm thinking this thought? The question doesn't just interrupt the thought, it shifts you into the only true point of power, the witness. This is what Neville Goddard meant when he said, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. He wasn't just talking about surface identity tweaks. He was pointing to a shift in consciousness, a movement away from being the ego to being the one who sees the ego and chooses something else. You are not your trauma. You are the awareness in which that trauma occurred. You are not your assumptions. You are the consciousness that chooses them. You are not the 3D. You are the observer with the power to shift it by shifting within. You can't heal what you think you are. Here's where many people get stuck. They try to heal the ego as the ego. They think if they can just fix all their limiting beliefs, reprogram their mind, heal their inner child and think more positively, then they'll finally arrive. But they're doing all of that from the very identity they're trying to transcend. This is spiritual quicksand. The more you try to fix ego while being ego, the deeper you sink into the illusion that you are broken, behind, or not enough. You are not behind. You're just momentarily identified with a version of you that is scared. Awareness isn't scared. Awareness doesn't rush. Awareness holds space. And that holding, gentle, honest, compassionate witnessing, is what transforms everything. If you want true healing, true transformation, then stop identifying with the pain. Stop trying to fix the false self. Instead, turn inward and take your seat as the witness. From that place, everything begins to shift without force. Your assumptions are seeds in the garden of awareness. Every thought, feeling, and assumption you hold is like a seed. If you plant those seeds in the soil of ego, fear, doubt, desperation, they either won't grow or will grow twisted. But if you plant your assumptions in awareness, clear, detached, peaceful presence, they blossom. You can't assume the end while desperately needing the outcome to validate your worth. That's not assuming, that's bargaining, that's ego. Assuming the end, as Neville taught, is about resting in the felt knowing that your desire is already yours, because you already are the version of you who lives it. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are aware of being. And what you are aware of being is determined by where you place your identity, ego or awareness. The identity shift that changes everything. You can change your entire life without fixing your childhood, becoming more productive, or earning more money. You can change your entire life by changing who you think you are. Stop thinking you are the one who gets anxious, the one who gets rejected, the one who always messes things up. Start recognizing that those are stories the ego tells, and you are not the ego. You are awareness. You are the silent observer. You are the one who chooses. You are the one who assumes. You are the one who imagines and therefore creates. Once you stop defending the old identity, the new one arises effortlessly, not because you've worked hard, but because you stopped resisting who you've always been. Up until now, we've broken open the illusion. You are not your ego, you are not the sum total of your fears, thoughts, or even your desires. You are the silent, unchanging awareness behind them. But what does that realization actually do for you in day-to-day life? And if the ego is not you, then what are you supposed to do with it? Ignore it? Kill it? Transcend it entirely? The truth is far more grounded and much more empowering. In this part, we'll explore how to live from awareness while still using the ego constructively, not destructively. Rather than making the ego your enemy, you'll learn how to place it into its proper role, as a servant, not a master. From identification to integration. Many spiritual teachings, especially in the early stages of awakening, take a harsh stance toward the ego. They urge you to kill the ego, transcend it, or eradicate the false self. But this language only reinforces egoic conflict, one part of you trying to dominate another. That's not freedom, that's just inner war dressed up in spiritual robes. You don't need to kill the ego, you need to integrate it. When you stop identifying with the ego as your core identity, it no longer drives the bus, it becomes a passenger. Sometimes it's even a helpful one. The ego is the part of you that knows how to navigate social dynamics, manage time, learn patterns, and interpret feedback from your environment. But it's not qualified to decide who you are, what you're worth, or what's possible for you. Those decisions must come from awareness. To integrate the ego, you must first recognize when it's speaking, then consciously decide whether or not its input is useful. This is how you move from being controlled by the ego to consciously using the ego as a tool. Exercise. Whose voice is that? The next time you hear a self-critical thought, pause and ask, who is talking right now? You might hear, "You're not ready yet. This is embarrassing. They're going to think you're ridiculous. You always mess this up." Now ask, is this awareness speaking or the ego? Awareness never shames, never rushes, never panics, never criticizes. It observes with neutrality and responds with wisdom. If the voice is laced with fear, urgency, comparison, or judgment, it's ego. Once you recognize that, you can say internally, "Thank you for trying to protect me. I've got this now." This is compassionate self-leadership. You're not suppressing the ego. You're gently informing it that awareness is driving the car today. The ego's favorite costumes. To skillfully recognize the ego, you must understand its most common disguises. 1. The victim. Why does this always happen to me? This voice keeps you powerless, waiting for life to change instead of assuming the end and aligning with it now. 2. The perfectionist. It's not good enough yet. This keeps you stuck in endless preparation, afraid to fail, and obsessed with controlling how others perceive you. 3. The controller. If I don't obsess about this, it won't happen. This makes you believe manifestation requires constant thought, effort, and interference. 4. The critic. You look stupid. You sound delusional. This keeps you from boldly affirming what you want and taking inspired action toward it. These personas are not you, they are defense mechanisms. They were learned responses built to protect you from pain, rejection, shame, or perceived danger. And they worked, at least temporarily. That's why they've stuck around. But now it's time to outgrow them. Affirming from awareness, not ego. One of the biggest mistakes people make when practicing the law of assumption is affirming from the egoic self-image. For example, Ego says, "I am wealthy," while internally screaming, "I'm lying." Awareness says, "I know the end is already mine because I exist beyond time." Affirming from ego triggers resistance. Affirming from awareness creates resonance. When you are awareness, you're not trying to force belief, you're being the end result. You're no longer trying to change the 3D. You're resting in the knowing that reality must conform, because it already has. The observer as creator. Here's the paradox. The more you identify as the observer, the more influence you have over the observed. Quantum mechanics gives us a fascinating metaphor. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles behave differently depending on whether or not they're being observed. The observer changes the outcome, not by acting or forcing, but by simply being aware. Your consciousness behaves the same way. When you stop reacting from ego and start witnessing from awareness, your entire 3D world begins to shift in response. Not because you tried harder, but because you stopped creating from fear and started assuming from truth. The observer is the creator, and when the creator awakens to its own nature, miracles become normal. You're in a triad: ego, mind, awareness. Let's simplify it even further. You have three main voices inside. 1. The ego. Reactive, fearful, limited, past-based. 2. The mind. Neutral processing tool. Bridge between ego and awareness. 3. Awareness. Infinite, present, loving, still. Here's how they interact. Ego hijacks the mind when you're asleep to awareness. Awareness reclaims the mind when you're present and observant. Your job isn't to eliminate thought or even egoic patterns. Your job is to watch them and choose which voice you amplify. That's the real power of manifestation. Not in controlling thoughts, but in choosing identity. You are not at war. Let's pause and emphasize this again. You are not at war with your ego. It is not the villain. It's a frightened child wearing armor. It doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be disarmed with compassion. When awareness leads, ego softens. You don't need to scream affirmations, micromanage 3D, or bulldoze your fears. You need to become so identified with awareness that the ego has no choice but to fall in line, like a dog that senses calm, assertive leadership. Closing this part, awareness in action. Let's bring it home with some key reminders. The ego isn't bad. It's just not the whole truth of you. You are awareness. You can watch your thoughts without obeying them. Manifestation becomes simple when you assume from your true identity, not your false limitations. You don't become the version of you who has it. You remember that you always were. You're not here to destroy the ego. You're here to stop being ruled by it. We left off exploring how the ego survives through attachment to identity, story, time, and validation. It's not evil, it's just mechanical. It doesn't create anything new. It just recycles what you've believed before. But now comes the most important piece of the entire chapter. You can't escape the ego from within the ego. The mind cannot fix itself. It can rearrange furniture in the burning house, read books, do affirmations, visualize, set goals, but it can't walk out of the fire. Only awareness can do that. Only the you that notices the story, watches the feeling, and hears the thoughts can exit the loop. This is the moment everything begins to change. Let's explore how. Step 1. Noticing without identifying. Most people notice their thoughts, but they believe them automatically. I'm not good enough. I'll never get that job. She doesn't love me anymore. This always happens to me. It feels like you're simply observing reality, but in fact, you're unconsciously fusing with a thought pattern that's been rehearsed thousands of times. To break the loop, you need to start saying to yourself, I'm noticing a thought that says I'm not good enough. This one sentence is deceptively powerful. It inserts a layer of awareness between you and the ego. That layer is freedom. Let's say you wake up and feel an old sense of dread in your body. Your heart sinks, your stomach tightens, and a voice says, "You've already failed today." Your habitual self might respond by numbing, scrolling, overworking, or spiraling into self-hate. But your aware self can pause and whisper, "This is a familiar ego loop. I'm noticing a fear pattern. I'm safe. I don't need to follow it." Even if your nervous system still reacts for a while, your choice point has opened. The loop has been interrupted. This is not about forcing yourself to be positive. It's about reclaiming authorship. You don't have to control the thoughts. You don't have to fix the emotion. You just have to stop fusing with it. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. Step 2. Interrupting with curiosity. When awareness returns, the game is no longer about resistance. It's about curiosity. Curiosity is the ego's kryptonite. It dissolves rigid assumptions and invites you into presence. Try this. Next time you feel unworthy, anxious, or stuck in a spiral, ask, what story am I believing right now? Where did I learn that? Is this true right now, or is it just familiar? If I didn't believe this thought, who would I be? You don't need a perfect answer. These aren't prompts to fix you. They are keys to unlock the prison door. Ego speaks in absolutes. This is just who I am. It's always like this. Awareness whispers, is it? Step 3. Feel the feeling, not the story. This is one of the most misunderstood pieces in healing and manifestation work. The story is not the feeling. The feeling is not the story. Let's say someone ghosts you after a wonderful date. Your mind might rush into, they never liked me. I always mess things up. I knew this was too good to be true. But beneath that, maybe just sadness, a pang in the chest, a bit of fear, disappointment. Can you sit with the raw feeling without adding a story? This is a practice, a sacred one. You might say, I'm feeling a contraction in my chest. There's a sadness. I don't need to label it. I'm staying with it. No analysis, no solving, just witnessing. The ego interprets pain as a problem. Awareness holds pain like a child. In that holding, the pain can metabolize. Energy moves. The loop dissolves. Step 4. Observing the loop in real time. Once you begin seeing the loop, it starts appearing everywhere. You'll hear a text notification and feel a rush of anxiety. Ego says, they're mad at you. You'll see someone succeed and feel a pang of comparison. Ego says, you're behind. You'll sit to meditate and feel resistance. Ego says, this doesn't work for you. But now you know the voice. You've named the loop. You've disarmed its urgency. You can pause and say, here's that I'm not enough soundtrack again. Thank you, but I'm not available for that anymore. This isn't denial, it's awareness. You're not pushing the ego away. You're simply not letting it drive anymore. Step 5. Anchoring in the new identity. As you practice observing the ego without obeying it, you begin to stabilize in a new center of gravity. I am awareness. Not the spiritual bypass version, the real lived experience. You might find yourself saying things like, that's my old trauma pattern. Thank you, but I choose differently now. I'm experiencing fear, but it's not who I am. This thought is loud, but it's not the truth. You'll begin to trust the felt sense of awareness more than the shouting of the mind. And from here, everything begins to shift. Manifestation becomes possible, not because you forced yourself to think better thoughts, but because you disidentified from the one who believed in lack. You became the one who sees. The inner divorce. Breaking up with ego identity. There will come a moment, and it's painful and beautiful, when you realize, I'm no longer willing to be who I thought I was. This is the ego's death rattle. It will fight for survival with stories like, you're betraying your past. Who do you think you are? This isn't safe. And yet a deeper calm arrives. A presence, a space. You begin to understand. I'm not here to endlessly fix the old self. I'm here to become something new. That's when the real manifestation begins. Not from ego's desperation, but from awareness's knowing. Not from controlling life, but from allowing your chosen end to rise from the silence. Not by proving yourself, but by remembering yourself. The ego will not go quietly. You may have noticed by now, the moment you try to observe your thoughts, the moment you pull back into awareness, something resists. That resistance is not you, it's the ego, the false self, the mental structure that believes it is you. And to that structure, your awakening feels like death. Ego is not inherently evil. It's just terrified. Terrified of being seen through. Terrified of losing control. It has spent your entire life trying to ensure its survival by maintaining the illusion that it is the real you. So when awareness begins to stir, ego doesn't cheer. It tightens its grip. It whispers thoughts like, this is stupid. I'm doing it wrong. Nothing is happening. I've always been this way. It's never going to change. Other people can manifest, but not me. These are not your thoughts. These are survival strategies. Your task is not to argue with these thoughts, not to analyze them, resist them, or force them away. Your task is to see them clearly and return to the seat of the observer. Every time you do that, you weaken the ego's hold just a little more. Awareness doesn't fight. It witnesses. That's your power. What the ego really wants, but will never admit. Here's the secret. Ego doesn't actually want to run the show forever. It just doesn't trust you to take over. The ego developed because at some point you needed protection. You were a child. You were vulnerable. You needed control, identity, separation, labels, and defense mechanisms. And ego stepped up. But now you're awakening. You're remembering your true nature. And ego, sensing the shift, throws a tantrum. Ironically, what the ego truly wants is what only awareness can offer: peace. The ego craves safety. Awareness is safety. The ego wants control. Awareness is control, not through force, but through presence. So we do not kill the ego. We do not suppress or silence it. We liberate it by ceasing to obey it. The more you dwell in awareness, the more ego's voice quiets naturally. Like a guard dog whose owner has finally come home, it starts to rest. What if you don't feel the shift? You might be listening to all this and thinking, I get it intellectually, but I don't feel any different. How do I know if I'm in awareness? That's valid, but here's the truth. Awareness is not a feeling. It's the one who notices all feelings. You will not experience awareness as a loud voice. You will not hear trumpets or see flashing lights. You will simply realize that you are the one observing your inner world, not the inner world itself. It's subtle at first, but like a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Over time, the center of your identity begins to shift. You'll notice you're less reactive. You'll experience intense emotions and not be swept away by them. You'll hear your ego's voice and choose not to obey. That is awareness in action. That is transformation. The repeating trap. I am the one who's trying. One of ego's cleverest disguises is the spiritual self. It learns the language. It picks up the teachings. It says, I'm trying to be aware. I'm doing my shadow work. I'm healing. But look carefully. Who is the I doing all this? If it's still the ego, it will use spirituality as just another method of control. It will chase awakening as a goal to achieve. It will measure progress. It will compare your practice to others. It will say, you're not doing enough. You should be more evolved by now. And just like that, you're back in the illusion. There is no I who awakens. Awakening is what happens when the I is seen through. So the moment you notice you're trying to be aware, pause. Ask, who is trying? Don't answer mentally, just look. That looking is awareness. You are already what you seek. Here's the ultimate paradox. You can't become what you already are. You're not trying to reach awareness. You're not trying to gain consciousness. You're not trying to earn divinity. You are already the awareness in which all of this is appearing. The practice is not about becoming. It's about remembering. It's about relaxing the false self's grip just long enough to notice the ever-present truth beneath it. Right now, as you hear this, awareness is here. It's aware of your ears picking up these words. It's aware of your thoughts. It's aware of your reactions. It's aware of your body. It's aware of the room around you. You don't need to achieve this. You just need to recognize it. That's the practice. The inner shift that changes everything. When you begin living from awareness, even in small doses, everything changes. You don't react the same way to your thoughts. You don't spiral as quickly into old emotions. You don't chase desires from a place of lack. You don't try to make things happen with force. You become more magnetic by nature. Why? Because you're no longer operating from survival. You're creating from truth. You're assuming from wholeness. And from this space, manifestation becomes inevitable. Not because you learned the right technique, but because you've returned to the right identity. You stopped being the one who wants, and remembered you are the one who is. The problem with fixing yourself. Ego is endlessly fixable. That's how the ego survives, by staying in business. It invents problems and then promises solutions. It tells you that you're broken, but if you buy the right course, script enough affirmations, heal your inner child, or finally change your core belief, then maybe you'll be worthy of the desire you already imagined. Let's pause and call this out. That's a scam. You are awareness. Awareness does not need to be fixed. It does not have wounds to heal, traumas to release, or confidence to build. Awareness is already whole. It is already perfect. It already is. But when you believe you are ego, the character, then you're playing a never-ending game of self-improvement that will never make you feel free, because freedom was never for the character. Freedom only ever belonged to the one watching the character. This is not to say healing has no value. From a compassionate perspective, attending to pain and trauma is loving. But it must be done from the position of the observer, not the sufferer. There is a difference between trying to fix ego so it can finally deserve the manifestation versus being awareness and allowing the desire to unfold, while holding space for ego's discomfort with grace. The first path keeps you in identity. The second opens the door to reality creation. This is what Neville meant when he said, "Dare to assume you are what you want to be, and you shall become it." He didn't say, "Fix all your flaws until you become the person who can manifest." He said, "Assume. Now. Right now. In this very moment. Not after another breakthrough. Not after you become a more healed version of yourself. Right now. Because the truth is, only awareness can assume. Ego cannot. Ego can't let go. Letting go is the most misunderstood piece of manifestation. People say, "I'm trying to let go, but I keep obsessing. I let go yesterday, but I feel anxious today, so maybe I didn't do it right. How do I let go without losing the desire?" Here's the truth. Ego can't let go. It doesn't have the authority. Why? Because it's the one clinging. Letting go doesn't happen within the character's thoughts. It happens when you shift out of identification with the thoughts. You don't need to force ego to stop thinking. You don't need to beat her into a state of detachment. You just need to stop thinking you are her. When awareness notices the anxiety of ego and says, "I see you," there is no war, no trying, just presence. And ironically, that's when true letting go happens, when the observer returns to observing. Letting go, then, is not a doing, it's a being, a natural effect of your returning to the seat of awareness. Let go of being ego, and all the compulsive behaviors, mental loops, and attachment that felt impossible to release will dissolve on their own. You never had to stop the thoughts. You just had to stop being the one thinking them. Why ego's beliefs don't matter. Most law of assumption content puts heavy emphasis on beliefs. Change your beliefs and you'll change your life. But we're going to go one level deeper here. Ego's beliefs don't manifest. Awareness does. This distinction is everything. If you believe you must reprogram ego's subconscious mind before you can experience your new reality, then you're still identifying with it. You're still saying, I am the character with the problem. But when you recognize that you're not the mind, you stop fighting it. You stop trying to overwrite one illusion with another. Beliefs can shift, yes, but only when you stop giving them the power to define you. Neville said, your assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. He didn't say, your perfectly rewritten belief system will eventually allow things in. That's a key difference. What's needed is not a new identity, but the release of identity. Not to think differently as ego, but to remember you are not ego at all. Then, and only then, does the illusion lose its grip. The paradox of non-resistance. When you try to force ego to surrender, it resists more. When you try to quiet ego's thoughts, it shouts louder. When you try to kill the ego becomes the one doing the killing. This is the paradox. Ego cannot defeat ego. Resistance is its fuel, and the spiritual seeker who tries to force their way out of the mind ends up more stuck than before. The only way out is love, radical allowance, complete inner permission. That doesn't mean indulging the ego or agreeing with it. It means not arguing with it. It means saying, yes, I see this fear, and I'm not here to fix it. I'm here to watch it. And when you watch from the seat of awareness, really watch without resistance, that fear often softens. Not because you fought it, but because you let it exist. Non-resistance doesn't mean liking what ego thinks. It just means not identifying with ego's thoughts as your own. It means letting the storm pass without jumping into the thunder. Awareness is like the sky. The ego is like weather. Let the clouds come. Let them go. But stay sky. You are already it. This chapter began with a simple but radical idea. You are not the ego. You are not the mind. You are not the character. You are the one who knows the character. And now we close with an equally radical truth. You already are everything you seek. You don't need to become your ideal self. You are the one imagining them. You don't need to chase the state. You are the source of all states. You don't need to make ego into a perfect vessel of worth. You are the worth, the infinite value behind the illusion. Manifestation doesn't require you to change what you are. It asks only that you remember. Who is desiring? Who is watching? Who is imagining ego having it all? That one, that silent, invisible witness behind the scenes, is the only real self. And that self is already complete, already safe, already free.